So you're probably expecting MotoMan here. Sorry to disappoint. See, MotoMan didn't believe me when I tried to tell him that we took what used to be a CX-30 and rebodied it, that's believable, but put 600 and some pounds of batteries under the thing and put lower rolling resistance tires on it and still managed to make it handle better than a CX-30 did. Right? So while he goes out and drives the thing so he can believe me, I'm gonna sit here and tell you how it all works. Oh yeah, I may have forgotten to mention, it's electric. So as you can probably tell from this right here, you don't need a lot of electric motor to drive this car around. This little guy here is 143 horsepower, which turns out, because it's always delivering that power, the power band is so wide on an electric motor, that's about enough to give it the same acceleration profile basically as a CX-30. But that's not what's interesting to me, because I'm a chassis guy. What's interesting to me is that this guy is super smooth. And because it's super smooth, we're able to mount it much more rigidly than we could mount the combustion engine. What that means to me when I'm picking out tires is I can have a stiffer tire. That gives us much better steering response, which is part of the sort of formula of making the car handle better. The other part of the formula is that this air right here doesn't weigh very much. So those front tires are not working very hard to turn the nose of the car around. So I'll get more into that later, but let's see if MotoMan can actually feel any of this stuff.
So before Coleman tossed me the keys to this thing, he gave me the following gentle reminder. This is a city car. You probably don't or really shouldn't take it to the canyons. So with that, let's do what Coleman intended and drive it around town. 3,655 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 1,658 kilograms. This, he already told you, is based on the CX-30. So it's about 400 pounds more than the lightest flavor of CX-30. With that, no regen, foot to the floor, open the taps fully. Oh, that's pretty good. That, you know what, that's better than an ID4, and it sounds kind of cool. It almost sounds like a Porsche Taycan. Well, this is actually kind of fun. I should have taken it to the canyons. But then again, it's really not designed to be that kind of Mazda. It's designed to be more of a city vehicle, and the way it delivers power is exactly what you'd expect from an electric vehicle. Matter of fact, it's a little bit better than other city cars we have driven. If there's a spectrum with the ID4 down here and the Mini EV up here, I'd say this is much closer to the Mini. The Mini perhaps edges this out just ever so slightly, but this is definitely on the more fun side of that quotient. It's not quite the one-pedal driving that one could have on a Nissan Leaf. That's literally, you take your foot off the accelerator and it comes almost to a stop. This is maybe a couple of steps away from that. I would argue maybe there could be one more level of regen here.
So with all that airspace under the hood and a big battery underneath the floor, the weight distribution of this car is completely flipped from the way it is in a CX-30. CX-30 is about 60% front, 40% rear. We're 40% front, 60% rear. What that does is gives us the weight distribution and lower center of gravity of like a mid-engine sports car. The center of gravity is 2 inches lower than it is in a CX-30. So the weight distribution and low center of gravity of mid-engine sports cars are a great place to start from. But there's one disadvantage to a mid-engine sports car, and that's turn-in. You have to kind of know how to drive one of those cars to make them handle well, because there's not enough load on the front tires. When you turn in, they're kind of sluggish. If you know what you're doing, you'll trail brake or lift throttle coming into a corner to get those front tires to bite to make it turn in. We've automated all that. So G-vectoring control, which we have in all of our front wheel drive cars, is automatically shifting weight onto the front tires. This has E-GVC, which is more than just G-vectoring control with an electric motor, or actually it's not, that's exactly what it is. But that's a bigger deal than it seems like it is. The reason is, the way GVC works normally is we just use the powertrain to shift weight onto the front tires. When you turn the wheel, it'll reduce the engine output just a tiny hair to shift weight to the front tires to make it turn in better. The problem with that is it only works when the engine's generating power. If you're coasting, we can't cut power because there's already none. If you're braking, we can't do anything. So with an electric motor, GVC can be working all the time. Of course, if we're accelerating, we cut a little bit of acceleration to shift weight to the front tires. If we're just coasting, when you turn the wheel, the regen will do that. If you're already in regen, you're completely off the throttle and a bunch of regenerative braking, there's still a little bit more regen to give. There's always a little bit of headroom. And we're not shifting that much weight. It's only about 0.05 G. Now, the other thing that the electric motor gives us is response time. To put GVC in our cars in the first place, we had to really speed up the communication between the steering system and the engine system. We had to have a faster engine computer so that it could respond quickly enough. We got it down to 50 to 100 milliseconds of delay between our signal and the actual deceleration. With an electric motor, it's down to about 30 milliseconds. That difference is enough to make a difference, believe it or not. And finally, on the corner exit, in theory, we should be turning in and shifting weight to the front and turning out and accelerating a little bit and shifting weight to the rear tires. In reality, we can't do that precisely enough with the gasoline engine to have the driver not feel that acceleration, just to have them feel good steering. With the electric motor, we can. We can give it about 0.01 G of acceleration as we roll out of the steering. And that's enough to weight those rear tires and make it come out of the corner more precisely. Now, both GVC and E-GVC also do a little trick on corner out where we drag the outside front brake just a hair to also help the car straighten out. But that little bit of acceleration also helps make the whole cornering package just feel more natural.
Now, a bit of a recap here. Yes, it is indeed based on the CX-30 platform, which means McPherson struts up front, torsion beam in the back. Add a 638-pound battery, and you would think, wow, this is going to be terrible. And here we go, around a turn here. I definitely feel the extra weight. It does not have the feel of a CX-30, and here I'd say it's a damn good thing. What Coleman was telling us about the inverse relationship of the weight distribution works incredibly well. It almost feels as if this thing is a rear-wheel drive vehicle. It's got that kind of behavior. You feel heft to this thing, but more from the rear. It's nothing you're gonna push very aggressively through turns like this because you will go off into that car over there. It would lean, but for the most part, up to a certain level, there is very good balance between composure and compliance. And I'd go so far as to saying it's a better balance between those two aspects of driving dynamics than the CX-30. And something tells me it has everything to do with where that battery sits in the vehicle. Remember, it's kind of here and goes all the way back to the rear wheels. Moving on, I would say steering is what you'd expect from a Mazda. The only difference here is you don't feel a significant amount of torque steer through this thing. Now as the road opens up to 2 lanes here, let's understand the brakes and the biggest departure from the CX-30 on which this is based, besides the propulsion system. And here you don't feel like that classic on-off switch of either electrics or hybrid systems, but you do feel a bit of a difference in the way the pedal feels. In terms of brake performance, it's pretty good, it's pretty even. I'd say they've done a good job of trying to keep it normal, but you really can't argue that there is a difference in the overall pedal feel. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the Options Game with today's contestant. The first ever electric car Mazda is bringing out in the US. This one is called the 2022 Mazda MX-30. Now, before we get into pricing, I do want to point out a couple of things that have stood out to me, namely packaging. We'll get more into the details when we get back inside the car. However, 2 things that I think are totally cool. Number one, the doors, the way they open kind of barn style or suicide style. They open perpendicular to the vehicle, so way like this. And then getting inside and outside the vehicle, all of them come with a powered driver's seat. The people in the back can move the driver's seat forward from switches in the rear of the vehicle. Anyway, now that we understand that, let's press on to what this thing costs, which is not cheap. $33,470 for the most basic MX-30. They all come front-wheel drive. There is no all-wheel drive on offer. And they all come pretty well equipped, meaning things like a sunroof, a lot of the safety stuff you see in Mazdas now, that's fitted as standard here. First factory option we fit to this one is the color. You and I, we've seen some amazing colors from Mazda over the years. There was this Soul Red Crystal, which we have seen on this car. Absolutely stunning, probably the best color on this specific car with the two-tone. It's also the most expensive extra cost color at $995. To that, we add the Premium Plus package. Now that adds a bunch of stuff, but the bits that really stand out, the Bose stereo, the partial leather interior, and the 360-degree surround view monitor, it ain't cheap at $3,010. Now, before we get to the 2 other bits, the destination and the final price, I do need to point 2 items that are fitted as standard. I guess you could consider it standard. Number one, they throw in $500 of charging on the charge point network. That's great. A lot of car manufacturers already do this. So you know what? We'll call that a wash. However, they throw in 10 days a year in a gasoline car. Now that's not new. We saw that in the Fiat Cinquecento. However, the way they fulfilled that was through enterprise rental car. And what you guys don't know about me, I am a road warrior. Even before I did this, I was traveling a lot for work. I have flown over 2 million miles with one airline. So I know car rental companies, enterprise, it's about the worst. Thankfully, Mazda's not doing that. They're not even fulfilling this through a rental car company. What they are doing is fulfilling this through Mazda dealers. So you don't get a rental car, you get another Mazda. So from what I understand, one is a choice of like a Mazda 3 or a CX-5 or a CX-30. Hopefully that includes an MX-5. Admittedly, that may be my road warrior / cheapskate side talking. Either way, nice touch, which means we need to press on to the final numbers. First stop would be the destination and handling, and that would be not from Mexico, not from their new plant that they're opening with Toyota in the US. Rather, this will be made at their headquarters in Hiroshima, $1,075, which brings us to the total retail price. And before I tell you this, remember, Coleman said this is a city car, so keep that in mind. $38,550 for a city car. I'm not a big green guy. Like, I grew up in New York City. I recycle because you have to, because there's no place to put garbage on an island. So I'm a big recycler, but I'm not one of these like, oh my God, I want to save the spotted owl. But I do like what they've done here in terms of the use of the materials inside the vehicle. Like, for example, all of the plastics throughout the interior is partially made of recycled water bottles. But more interesting than that, look at the cloth specifically on the door panels. That is made of recycled threads, at least 20% of it. And the effect there is not so much, oh my God, I can brag that I have a recycled interior. The effect is the tactile feel changes. It feels like a higher quality interior. They've decided to use cork down here. Now, cork is an interesting choice for a couple of reasons. Number one, yeah, the tactile feel, it kind of picks up on all the changes throughout the vehicle. Number two, other EVs have kind of used this idea. In this case, they've molded it to be a shelf for your phone. I've got my phone hidden over here. And they also use it as the cover for the cup holder's nice touch. And number three, I really don't think this was by design, but at least the marketing folks of Mazda, they go out of their way to say that Mazda started as a cork company in 1920. I wouldn't call it a pivot to go from cork to cars. I'd say you blew up the company and started from scratch, but this is a nice connection. Now, that being said, I'm going to take this opportunity to put an open letter out there to all OEMs, not just Mazda. This lovely touches. It brings together tactile feel, color and trim, and makes the overall design as more pageantry to the design. Why is this only reserved for quote-unquote green cars? Can we put this in performance-oriented cars as well, please? So a little inside baseball as it pertains to Mazda's and future products, specifically electric future product. This vehicle we knew was coming, but while they were announcing this, they already said, hey man, we're coming out with 2 to 3 more electric vehicles. Usually car manufacturers do not do this. Another very badly kept secret, the vehicle we are driving today, the reason why it does not have a frunk and has all that space underneath the hood, there is going to be a range extender version, and from what I understand, it is going to be a rotary range extender. So the concept of a range extender with a 100-mile range plug-in EV, that's something you and I have been bitching and moaning about to all the car manufacturers in Germany for the past 5 years. But that brings us full circle to this vehicle today, which is currently only going to be sold, at least from the get-go, in California. And I can see why they do that. But ultimately, as much as I like this thing, and it's much better than I thought it would be, it's super fun to drive, it feels like a Mazda, almost like a rear drive Mazda. However, 38 grand and I get 100 miles of range, I don't like that. I think that's overpriced, which brings us to the wish list. And here I'm going to ask for, you guessed it, a lower price. I think for the EV only, this needs to be somewhere in the 20s. The range extender, fine. Mid-30s, that is fine because I can use it in today's infrastructure. And this is the point in the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all in word, MotoManTV all in word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I would once again humbly request your help with the algorithm. What exactly does that mean? Yes, subscribe, notifications, but most importantly, hit like and share these episodes with your friends on all your socials. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.